Hey, welcome back to the Group Project Podcast. This is episode number 34. And I have had a great time talking to Ken Williams here before we get started here. Ken, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, good brother. I appreciate the invitation.
So, I spent the last 15 minutes talking to Ken. This is the first time I've actually met him. Been following him from afar on Twitter. Read his book, Starting a Movement. Kind of talked to some people who he's kind of served as their mentor. One of those people being Jessica Cabine, who was a guest a couple months ago. So I'm just thrilled that Ken gave me some time here to kind of pick his brain and see what's going on in his neck of the world. So Ken, I appreciate you being here. So you're currently in Atlanta, is that correct?
I am. I live just outside Atlanta, but when things settle down, I will be living on Delta Airlines again, hopefully.
So you do a lot of traveling then when there's no COVID going on, a lot of traveling, visiting districts,
yes,
consulting.
Yes, lots of that, conferences, all those things. So
sure. So, okay. So I should have said, so you own and I can see those of you listening at home can't see this, but Unfold the Soul is
yes.
that you've got the shirt, you've got the microphone cover there. So it's morphed into your business here, right?
Yes.
It's your thing. Why don't you tell a little bit, a lot of people know who you are, but some people don't. What is Unfold the Soul? What's kind of your niche?
All right. Well, my niche is helping schools and districts create cultures that deliver on the promise of equity, excellence, and achievement for all students, regardless of background. I lead and teach with a coach's heart. I love reaching inside and helping people see what they don't see in themselves. I love leadership. I set the stage for schools to create cultures that are consistent and pervasive. I help you build the skeleton of a good professional learning community, powerful collaboration, equity. And then once we get those boats out of the slip into the water and you're ready to drop anchor and go deep into discrete instructional practices, I call people to help you. but that's what I do ultimately is I help create culture. So I love culture. I love the messy people part of this work.
So you've been in education since 92, right?
Yes, sir.
So you're coming up on almost close to 30 years here. Is that, and your eyes are getting big right now. So is that hard to believe?
It is. I remember the first time I said to a friend, we've known each other 30 years. It just depressed me. I mean, yes, 30 years. So proudly.
So classroom teacher, assistant principal, and you spent a lot of that time in Maryland and Georgia. Is that correct?
Yes.
So maybe just kind of give the listeners maybe just a quick overview of where your career started, your positions, and maybe how you've gotten into this leadership and the speaking and the consulting and the writing that you're doing.
Sure. So I started Montgomery County Public Schools. It's a large suburban school district right outside Washington, D.C. I would say it's pretty progressive. It's I think it takes advantage of it leverages what gets leveraged in the marketplace. Like Lowe's is better because of Home Depot, and Home Depot is better because of Lowe's. And so Fairfax County Schools, which is right inside Virginia, is another big district, and they're just kind of competitive. And that was the good thing in that it kept both districts kind of on the cutting edge. Loved it there, cut my teeth there in leadership, but looked up, and while we were helping to create doctors, lawyers, dentists, master plumbers, tradespeople, master electricians and teachers and entrepreneurs, my wife and I could not afford a modest single-family home in the county in which we taught and led. And it bothered me and it gnawed at me that I had to jump the county to afford a decent home. And so I attended college in Atlanta. I'm a graduate of Morehouse College in Atlanta. And I always had fondness for the city, called some friends. And what I discovered was that, well, the price of bread is the same. The housing prices are different. I mean, you in hood parlance, you can get your come up in Atlanta. I mean, at any level. And so we moved to Atlanta, and I applied to a bunch of different school districts. And
Uh-huh.
I'm grateful to the one that called me. And I inherited the lowest performing school in the district. And it was at the time the lowest performing district in the greater Atlanta area. And so
Oh,
it was
wow.
a tale of two ends of the spectrum.
And how many schools are we talking about in the greater Atlanta area, would you say?
Oh boy. I mean, they're monstrous. I mean, we have hundreds of schools. This district, I believe, had 80 schools.
Wow.
This
Wow.
and it's a quote unquote suburban district. But
Uh-huh.
anyway, yeah. So it was, I went from a place with tons of resources to a place that was really struggling at the central office and especially at the board level. And it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
it was a mess there for a while, but it taught me a ton. And I think that's why I think it's helped to make me completely resolute and bulletproof about what's possible when educators lean into their collective expertise.
Sure. Sure. So okay, so um did you, when you went to that you mentioned that school that called you back, that you went to, that was in a principal position, is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And so and is that when you kind of started buying in? I got some questions because I just love in your book kind of you were real open and transparent about some of the struggles that you went through as an early leader.
Yeah.
But before I come back to that, is that where you kind of bought into that PLC process? I mean, that's, as I'm reading, and for those of you who haven't seen it, Starting a Movement is a book that really just focuses in on why PLCs are important in buildings and in districts. And I've had the pleasure of going to some of the those big PLC conferences where
Hmm.
we're dancing and
Yeah.
we're sipping the Kool-Aid and all kinds of great stuff. But was that building you were at, was that kind of where you started learning the PLC process, or was it later on in your career, or what would you say?
It was actually in 2000. I was still in
Okay.
Montgomery County. I had no idea who Rick DeFore was, but they brought him to the district. And sorry, I'll do that over because then you can edit that.
It's all right. I'll take it out. No
No, it was
worries.
actually around 2000. I was still in Montgomery County. I was a new assistant principal. We had a meeting of all school leaders, and some guy named Rick DeFore was speaking to us, and I had no idea who he was, but I did just buy a brand new Palm i705, which was sending email at 5 minutes per email. I was excited about that, so I sat in the back of the room with my Palm all charged up, ready to check out. And within 15 minutes, this man had my full attention. And I know I sound ancient now, but I left there with a legal pad, like 3 pages full of notes, ran back to my principal, ready to just implement everything. And he just kind of gave me that look like, you're not going to mess my school up. You'll be in your own school in a minute. You can try this and you can try number 6 and maybe number 9. But the rest of that stuff, you have to save it. So Rick had me from the beginning. And I think what the PLC process did for me, and that's another thing I think I do well. There are a lot of things I don't do well, but one thing I can do is make the PLC process really organic and have you understand it in its simplest form. I can boil things down to its simplest form.
Mhm.
Sometimes I think there's so many moving parts that we look at discreetly that it becomes a behemoth and we get away from the why of the work. But what Rick did that day was there are 1,000 things coming at you as a school administrator. And I was an AP at the time. And
Mhm.
now look, a new AP thinks they can do the principal's job right away. Like the first thing I did when I became a principal was call my old principal back and just apologize. And he said, "For what?" I just I'm sorry. Just accept my apology. I'm sorry. But with 1,000 things coming at you, all looking like high priority, what he did was he quieted the noise so that priorities emerged. Now the challenge was the PLC process doesn't reduce the number of things coming at you on the front end, but it does put like neon lights on those things that are most important. So I knew right away when I became a principal where I was going to put my A effort and where I was going to put my C effort
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
terms of building this culture. And
Mhm.
so that's what it did for me. And it's only gotten better since. PLCs have been dealing with equity 35 years before equity was ever a word in our lexicon. And that's the God's honest truth. 35 years prior. And
Huh.
so
Huh.
it is equity at work. I mean, question one is
Yeah.
literally equity.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I want to come back to a lot of that. So you kind of bought it. You're bought into the PLC process, and then you moved to, you finally got your own building. Then
Yeah.
you knew where you wanted to put your effort in, was in those in that
Yes,
PLC work. Is that correct?
it is.
Because
And I got my start there in Maryland. I was a principal there for a couple of years, and had some success, screwed up a bunch, learned a bunch of great leadership lessons that I was able to take with me to Atlanta. And I'm grateful for that, because it was more than like school culture shock. It was real school culture shock
sure,
when
sure.
I got there. And I love that district, and I bleed for that district to this day, and I'm grateful to them. But I'm battle tested. Like it definitely tested.
There's so
Definitely
much I
tested.
want to ask you about. Let's go back. Okay, so this podcast, we have a lot of new administrators, aspiring administrators. I really want to dig in. You mentioned some leadership lessons that you learned, whether it
Oh my.
was whether it was as an AP or a principal in Maryland, or whether it was in Georgia. There, man, I this is probably the question I'm most excited, because you're so like humble and modest, and you're like, I messed up.
I
Could you
appreciate it.
share? Would you mind sharing a couple of those things?
Oh my. So,
Hey, you go wherever you want,
yeah,
wherever you feel comfortable with, but.
sure. I mean, I've got a bunch. You know, and I don't know if this is inappropriate to mention, but I guess you're going to ask me about like where people can contact me and connect with
Yeah,
me in other places. So, like you, today I just announced that I am starting a podcast of my own, like as of today,
oh,
and it is. I'm gonna drop the video tomorrow. But the question I ask in the video is, what do you do when you have 3 years worth of almost daily journal entries um, on your leadership while you were the leader at that school? And the answer is, you start a podcast. And so I have 3 years worth of journals. And the only reason I have them is because my mentor in Maryland, as I was moving, gifted me with 2 journals and challenged me to journal my journey at this new school. And I don't like to write. I don't like to write. Writing is the bane of my existence. As Marie Kondo says, does not spark joy in my life. I don't like it. But she was such an influence. She is such an influence in my life that I took the challenge and I wrote. And I wrote with no filter. I didn't write with any intention of doing a podcast. There was no podcast at the time. I didn't write with any intention of ever publishing. And so things are raw and transparent and vulnerable. And so I've got lots of lessons. So if I think of a couple off the top of my head, it's a couple mistakes I made early on. Well, I mean, ones that I've continued to make is well, one, you got to get really clear that there's a difference between empathizing and um, enabling, and that was a challenge. So in both my experiences as principal, there were times where teachers just needed to drop something off in my office, and I was okay with that. I was okay with that. If it was something that they just were carrying in a backpack, they just need to drop it off so they can get on with their day, I'm fine with that. There were other times where they reached a point of frustration, and in their expression of that frustration, we're talking about things that are not aligned with our culture. And while I understand where it's rooted in, I can't co-sign on that. And so I had to learn how to empathize without agreeing that we got bad kids and agreeing that the low kids not gonna get it. Like I had to find a way to empathize with where you are without compromising the fact that I don't believe that. I know better than that. And as soon as as soon as I co-sign on that paper that says our kids are bad and expectations too high, you're dead. You're
that is
dead.
so
And
good.
so you've got to, so but at the same time, I wanted to be there for that person. And so I try to empathize with the frustration and then see if I can help gather some resources and support. So when I talk about The principalship is about hunt, gather, protect, and defend. It's those things. So that's one. Two, I am at my core a people pleaser. Now, I've grown different muscles through leadership, but at my core, I'm a people pleaser. And one of the subconscious challenges I know that I set before myself entering school leadership was to have tough conversations with people, because I know that's not my nature. My nature is to keep everybody happy, to use my sense of humor. I want everybody to like me. And so early on in my principalship, I did too much wanting to like me, and I let some things slide that need to be confronted. And then I learned better in my second experience. It's having those tough conversations, and having those tough conversations with individuals when you know it's individual. I have a couple of letters in my journal that I printed out because I was so frustrated with myself, where I'd sent out an entire email to the staff, which is, if it's more than 4 lines, go talk to somebody. Don't do the email. But I'd send the email to staff about whatever it is, being late for staff meetings, some punctuality issue, whatever it is. I know doggone well it's 3 people, but I send it to 60 people. And the 60 people know doggone well I know it's the 3 people. But I'm kind of doing an end around, instead of confronting it. And so I not only missed the opportunity to confront the people directly, but I upset other folks as well. And I understand it. I felt the same way as a teacher. And here I was doing some of what, I didn't like at all. The last thing I'll share is, and I don't want to take too much time on this. I do
This is
workshops
great.
on
Take as much time as you want.
Okay.
This is so good.
is the principalship is, school leadership is, it's a visionary position. It's a visionary position. There's only one person. If I could help like new school leaders understand one thing, it's the principalship, assistant principalship is a visionary position. And when I say assistant principalship, I guess I'm biased because from day one, I was in training to be a principal. And so it wasn't a job where you do discipline and you do referrals and you do, counting test booklets. Like I may have been doing those things, but it was all in preparation to be a principal. You got to see the dawn before the day. You're going to see the dawn before the day. You got to see around corners for your staff. And you're going to see things in a state where it's flourishing before staff do. And what I'm getting to is, we've got to change the equation on buy-in with leaders. Like we think buy-in happens on the front end, where I'm trying to convince you and I'm showing you this slick paper and this box with all these goodies and promise you all these great results and great results and great results. And what I talk about in my writing and in my workshops of late and the coaching I do is, buy-in doesn't happen on the front end. Breakthroughs don't happen on the front end. When I ask my audiences, when's the last time you had a breakthrough? When you heard a podcast or a sermon, or you went to a conference, or you heard a speaker, or read a book? And a lot of people raise their hands, and I challenge them. I say, I challenge you. I don't think you had a breakthrough. I think you had an epiphany, right? Epiphany may move you to take some action, but breakthroughs don't come until you have better results. And so the challenge with the principalship is this: collaboration is the engine that drives a learning community. We need people to collaborate effectively, right? And it's not a learned skill. It's something that folks have to study, practice, and do over and over again. Waiting for folks to see the light on why collaboration is vital for equity is a no-win situation. The job of the principal is to put teachers in position with the appropriate resources and support to execute high leverage collaborative practices so they get different results, which will then change their attitudes. And what we want is, we want the fast track. We want their attitudes to change on the front end. And that's next to it. That's not how life works. Life works. You can buy a new software product based on something you saw, or heard about on television, and you could feel good about the purchase you made, but you're not going to be bought in until you install it, you work on it, right? And when it gets you better results. That's the bottom line. And so for the principal, when I work with principals on setting up cultures, a PLC culture, we got to get all teams working. We got to get all teams working, even the ones who don't want to work at the time. We need to start with the why, and then we've got to revisit that over and over again and back map everything we ask our teams to do to that collective why on that we establish on the front end. And so if you've done any work with me, folks have, I'm big on establishing that why, because that serves as our schools and districts North Star. And everything we do should back map to the why. And that was a long
Holy
answer.
cow, man. That there's like so much good stuff there. First of all, I truly believe what you got listed, what you've got in those journals there, you got some book material, man. I guarantee the stories you just read, or the stories that you just kind of shared, like that's such good stuff. I think
I appreciate it. I'm grateful to my mentor, because as impactful as many of those events were, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and you think at the time, there's no way I'm going to forget this stuff. 15 years later, I'm reading like, oh my God, that did happen. And oh my God, I did want to quit. I did want to quit that day.
So what years are those journals from then?
05 to 08.
05 to 08.
And I know it sounds like a long time ago, but I tell a lot of these stories anecdotally, and it just keeps people's rapt attention. And then I've got, the school was a hot mess. So there's some outrageous incidents in there. But, that's what I plan to do with the podcast idea, is to read the journals as written. I've got a little parental guidance sticker on the screen, because I'm gonna honor what I wrote, and then kind of process it, and then leave listeners with a couple of questions to think about themselves, and how can inform their leadership.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I feel
like story time with Ken.
Yeah, I love it, man. I feel honored that we broke the news here.
You did. You broke it here, no question about it.
Now, would you know what you're going to name the show at all yet, or?
Yes.
Or is that a secret?
Right now, the working title is the Unfold the Soul, Bless His Heart Leadership Podcast. And the origin of the name comes from, I got hired. We're selling our home. My family stays behind for 3 weeks to get the house ready. I drive down to Atlanta. I get there just in time for the first central office school leader, like pre-planning day. Like teachers have their days, like all the leaders get back together. I got there in time. I'm thrust back into Southern hospitality, which is just the best. I mean, I mentioned in a video that I'm from New York. When somebody says hello to you in New York, the first thing you check, make sure your wallet's still in your pocket, right? And Maryland's kind of the middle ground there between North and South. But back in Atlanta, just the Southern hospitality, and people so friendly. And I'd introduce myself. I'm Ken. And they'd say, well, I'm Dr. So-and-so. I'm at so-and-so school. Where are you? And I'd say, I'm at XYZ school. And they say, oh, that's nice. Bless your heart. And I said, thank you so much. Thank you very much. I just thought that was a compliment. But I'm telling you, every third person ended their introduction with, bless your heart. And then one woman, I swear, she laid hands on me and said, bless your heart. And I thought she started singing a hymn. Bless your heart. And that's when I had an idea that I might be walking into something here. And so that's what I realized, that bless your heart is kind of is not a compliment. That means you about to walk into something. So,
oh man.
And they were right from day one.
Well, I love the idea just of you cracking open those journals, reading some of those stories. I mean, just the couple that you listed off were just and I know you really didn't even go into much detail, but you nailed it.
Oh, thank you.
I'm
excited about it.
Well, that first idea about, I never heard somebody say it so simply. You said you're a master at kind of making it in taking complex ideas down into real simple ideas. Simplest form. And just that idea about, I mean, as a young administrator myself, as an assistant principal, whatever role it was, is you've got those teachers who want to lower the expectations and just admit these kids are tough.
That's
and
right.
just get it, and
Yep.
that was just such a good, I
Yeah.
mean, I never heard somebody say it quite like that. In
You
that,
can't let any light in. You can't let any air in on that. And you have to empathize.
so yeah, gosh, is there I mean, is there anything else you want to share about just that concept? Because that, if you could summarize my 8 years as an assistant principal, there was just a handful of teachers I really struggled with because they would want to lower those expectations for kids. And, we thought we worked in tough schools, and I can't imagine the
Yeah.
school that you worked in.
No, but
Uh,
everything's relative. Everything's relative.
but I just didn't know how to do that delicate balance with those teachers. I really didn't.
Yeah, it's sometimes folks need time to decompress. I tell my folks all the time, my job is to hunt and gather everything you need to do this work the right way. I will move hell and high water. I will move mountains. I will steal stuff to get you what you need to do this work. What I can't do are excuses because I'm that kid. And when we look around the staff meeting, we don't have time to do this today, but I know there's stories in this room. There are stories in this room of folks who wanted to lower the bar, lower the standard. Folks like me went to school with hand-me-downs, folks who come from the, adverse circumstances, people who had, teachers tell them they couldn't be anything. We got stories in this room, and I'm just not going to allow it. We know kids can learn. The question is, are they going to learn from us?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can't reach them, then that's why we collaborate. We turn to the next person who's got something. Jared's been tough. I can't get through to him. What are we going to do? What else can we do? That's always going to be the question. Now, I got tissue, name brand tissue with the lotion in the tissue, so you can take some time here. I'll go cover your class for 10 minutes. But we got to get back to it. So tell me what you need, but we're not giving up. Like we're not giving up. One of the things I did, one activity I did at the beginning of the year was I asked staff at my last school, what would you say is an acceptable percentage of failure at our school? And listen, we were 18, 20, 22% proficient in reading and math, things like that. So it was, and they were giving me percentages, they were giving me numbers. And at some point, I found some number, I don't know, 10, 12%. And I printed off a bunch of all of our class rolls, calculated the number, whatever it was, If it amounted to 120 kids, like everybody highlighters, and I said, let's identify the 120 kids. And they're like, my pleasure. And they're highlighting the hell out of things. They're highlighting, my
Uh-huh.
pleasure, sir.
Uh-huh.
And I said, all right, I need some folks to stay after school with me and set up in the conference room. We're going to do a phone bank and call these parents. It's August. Let's call the parents and let them know up front, look, by law, you can still send them to school. We're going to feed them twice a day, go on some nice field trips and stuff, but they ain't going to make it. We just want to let you know right now in August, they ain't going to make it, but you keep sending them. We'll take care of them and send them home safe. And my teachers are like, we're not going to do that. That's ridiculous. We don't like that. I say, well, what are you going to do? We're going to push them out in front of cars, or we're going to try to unlock learning. What are we going to do? And so they started to get an idea of what I was about. I knew I just couldn't come in and just said all kids can learn and that's it. I needed to discuss those things with them. And even in the professional development I conduct today, my goal is to provide adults with what I call experiences. So I take a very nonlinear approach to teaching PLCs. It's very nonlinear. I mean, I can print the 4 questions, you can read the 4 questions. I want to take you through an experience where you come to the conclusion that I want you to come to. I don't have to tell you anything. You come to that conclusion. And so I would take my staff through those kinds of things, like, hey, we got stories in this room. And some days I would tell some stories, and it'd be someone like, my teacher gave up on me in 5th grade if it wasn't for X, Y, and Z. So it's, empathizing with what their local frustration is one thing, but buying into what they're frustrated about and some of those things that are going to take us off course, that's never going to work. I believe in treating staff like, you ever watch, like my wife and son, they bond around Grey's Anatomy. we got 18 seasons, and everybody's walking around the hospital, and everybody's good looking. Like I've never seen such hot doctors and nurses, and everybody's dating one another and stuff like that. And all of a sudden they roll Jared in, and his arm is going the wrong way and the bone's sticking out. And all of a sudden, like, everybody converges. Even his parents are in the operating room, which is crazy, but it's Hollywood. But anyway, everybody converges. There are no more titles. There's no more like whose role is what. It's like who's got the answer, who can help. It's like total triage. And that's how we have to treat mastery around essential learning targets, as triage. So when we run into a wall with one student, it's all right, who's got an answer? Who's got an answer? Who's got an answer? It's that you know, that never-ending search for the answer, not for everything, but for what we deem essential. And so it is a delicate balance. It's not always going to be received well, but that's part of principalship. I call it the blessed burden. It's part of the principalship.
Yeah. Yeah.
Heck, if the principal lets air in on all kids can learn, that culture's dead. Mediocre at best. That's the best you can hope for. It's pockets of excellence.
One of the quotes that's in your book, I'm looking at it's right up there on chapter 1, is leaders strike the match for the school-wide cultural change. Staff fan the flames.
Yeah.
Do you want to just expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, that's something else I learned from, Rick, Becky, and Dr. Bob Aker, and that's about the Guiding Coalition. So that's another leadership mistake I made earlier in my principalship was I watched too many movies. I watched, too much Jaime Escalante and Joe Clark and Aaron Gruelle and, Simon Thackeray, To Her With Love, the single heroic leader. And I thought I would come in with a bunch of polysyllabics and a lot of passion and convince everybody that we need to be going this way. But that only happens in the movies. Like, there's always one person who's awesome in the school and everybody else sucks. That's the formula in movies. There are no movies about great collaborative teams, great guiding coalitions. Like that, nobody wants to see that. They want to see heroic, one guy, one woman standing on top of rubble. And so I thought I had that idea in my head, and I wasn't taught that. That's just something I had. And it took a minute for me to realize that I need a guiding coalition. Like, leaders strike that match. I mean, leaders got to facilitate a process where we develop a why for our school that is so large it encompasses everyone else's why. And I've got processes when I work with schools and districts to do that kind of stuff. And then we got to identify the collective commitments that are aligned with that why. And then we've got to identify folks on our staff who, I call it a leadership team on steroids. The last thing education needs is like one more name, right? So if you got an existing leadership team, my question is this. Rick DeFore, boy, oh boy, I don't have the definition memorized by heart, but basically the Guiding Coalition is charged with helping to facilitate the change process through its predictable turmoil. And so when you think about staff fanning the flames, there are 4 questions of a learning community. What do we expect students to know? How do we know when they've learned it? How do we respond when they haven't learned it? How do we respond when they already know it? You think about a guiding coalition. When staff's fanning the flames, you've got a team of people who are asking the same 4 questions, but in terms of the staff. What do our teams need to know? How do we know when our teams have learned it? How do we respond when our teams haven't learned it? How do we respond when our teams already know it? And so instead of me making all the decisions, I've got to gather a small group of influencers on our staff, and a couple of them need to have juice, like real clout on staff. And leadership, as a leader, I've got to be able to convince my small group of the way we need to go and what we need to implement. If I can't convince that small group of influencers, I got no chance with the larger staff. Now, the trade-off is this. Once the group and I agree that this is the way we need to go, we need to do a common assessment protocol with every common assessment, then it's not them just taking the message back to the team, it's them advocating for what we've decided because they've helped to decide what we've decided. So it's a trade-off. I take my leadership hat off with the Guiding Coalition, and we're all on one level. Like, there's no hierarchy, right? Because with a Guiding Coalition, I can't say, hey, I think we should start common assessment protocols next week. If the Guiding Coalition team is like, I think that's a little soon. I think mid-November is going to be better. I don't get to say, well, I'm the principal, damn it, we're doing it. Because again, if I can't get them, But the trade-off for their influence is when we leave this room, and staff already knows this, when we leave this room, I'm not going back and doing what we usually do with leadership teams, like, all right, here's what happened at the meeting. Jared said we need to do this, number one. Everybody's like, okay. Number two, Jared said this. Number three, Jared said this. Number four, Jared said this. People look up like, what? He said what? I was like, yeah, I tried to tell Jared. Shoot. I tried to tell you. You know what I mean? Like the old thrown under the bus. You don't get to do that when you're part of that fanning the flame team. And so that's why I call it a leadership team on steroids, because you need to have a filter. Well, one, the folks who join it need to know up front, you are helping to facilitate change, and change is always going to be challenging. So you got to want that. And as a teacher, my first 5 years, I wanted no parts of that. I was not interested. I was interested in loving all my kids. I had good teammates. That was it. But I don't know, year 7, I just caught the leadership bug, and I couldn't wait to be a part of, helping to convince staff that this is the way to go, and supporting decisions we made. But that's what happens. You got to have staff fan the flames. The idea of the single charismatic leader only happens in movies. It does not happen in the real world. And when it does, at best, you'll get a blip or two of improvement. But then when that person's removed for like abusive, right, verbal abuse to staff members and a culture of fear, everything falls back, right? It's when you leave and things keep trucking forward is when you've established some kind of legacy. And you've got to cultivate that with what Rick, Dr. Bob, and Becky called a guiding coalition. And I think that's chapter 1 of the book.
Yeah. So the book we're talking about here, if you like what you're hearing, we're talking about Ken's book. It's about what came out in 2015. Is that what
15, yes.
Hey,
yeah,
so
I'm working on a new book now, but yes, it's been out since 15. Myself and Tom Herc, who is out of Western Canada, wrote it together, and it's had a lot of success. We're really grateful.
So check that out if you like what you're hearing, and I don't know how you couldn't. I mean, Ken's dropping all kinds of knowledge on us here. It's been awesome.
Thank you, brother.
But check out his book, Starting a Movement, available on anywhere, Amazon, wherever you get your books at. One thing you talk about is you've talked about it in this podcast a little bit, all right, is equity. And that's such a huge thing right now. And a lot of leaders, especially, here in Iowa, a lot of us have been more in the rural settings, and we don't know where to start sometimes. What would you, if you were giving just any sort of guidance to on administrators on where to start if they want, a lot of people say we're doing equity, but I don't know how well they're doing it. What would you recommend? I know that's a tough question, but
no, it's pretty easy for me.
Okay.
Great. Sound arrogant. But I'm telling you, I boil it down, man. I boil it down. Well, one, there are lots of layers of equity, and all this work around and attention around social justice has brought all sorts of layers. But in our work and the work of schools, there's what I call foundational equity. Like, I don't want to talk about hanging more, having more Black leader posters in your room until we deal with foundational equity, right? Because everything's going to be compromised. All your efforts, more books by Black authors, more books where, kids of color see their own faces. That's all great stuff. But if foundational equity is not in place, it's all going to be compromised, and it's going to be lip service. And foundational equity is the real work. That's the work. That's the work. And so here it is. Let me see here. Let's just say I'm holding a remote control. It's a television remote control. It's got about 20 buttons on it. For the purposes of this illustration, let's say that 5th grade teachers have decided that every 5th grade student's got to walk out knowing how to create this remote control, and it's got 10 steps. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Right? So they've deemed this essential, whatever you want to call it, essential, priority standard, power standard, whatever you want to call it. There are need to knows and there are nice to knows. The challenge with us in education is that we've been naming these things, but not treating them like their name. In your personal life, when you deem something essential, right? You have kids?
I don't know.
Okay. You got a bunch of kids in your district.
I got a bunch of kids in the district though,
And
man.
in your career, your back has been to the wall and you've had to make something happen for some kids. Like you've had to make things happen. Make sense? Right?
Yep.
Equity happens when you decide what is essential for every student to learn. And then you go about the process of growing every kid to it. See, that what I maintain is equity is 50% execution and 50% mindset. The execution part we've got down. I go to many districts, they're like, we've done essentials, Ken. We picked our essentials last year. We did priority standards. That's great. How's it working for you? Some districts I go to and I say, what's essential? And I get that glazed over look like this, like, whatever the district puts in bold and italics. That's all word. When a team puts their back to the wall and they identify 6, this is an arbitrary number, 6 learning targets in 5th grade math that every kid's got to get by the end of 9 weeks, by the end of the first marking period or the second marking period, when they put their backs to the wall and decide every kid's going to walk out knowing these 6, we're pushing for them to get 18, but these 6 they got to get. When that mindset clicks into place along with the execution, that's equity. Equity in its simplest form is giving kids what they need, when they need it, with urgency. And the what they need part is not arbitrary, and it's not left to judgment, and it's not left to how I feel about white kids with red hair or poor black kids or poor white kids from across town or kids that don't speak the King's English. What it comes down to is what have we decided as a team is essential? That is question 1 of a learning community. What must every student know and be able to do? The difference in schools that make it happen and ones that don't is they take it seriously. And what 80% of other schools do is they provide the opportunity for a kid to learn. They provide opportunities for kids to learn how to create the remote. They provide opportunities that some kids don't take. They provide opportunities that some kids squander away. But when in your personal life, when you've decided something must happen and the odds are against you, you move hell and high water, you work around it, you work in spite of it, you work through it, you use those, the challenges you use as context. See, once you decide something's essential, then the kid's background, their challenges, their issues, the stuff they bring to school is now context, not an excuse. The stuff beyond the essentials, kids are going to separate themselves. I call it the bar. Take every kid to and through that bar. Every learning endeavor has essentials. And that bar doesn't move. But you have to have the mindset where you are maniacal about growing kids to the bar. Collaboration in its simplest form is this. There are essentials every kid must learn. Agreed? Mm-hmm. No one teacher has all the answers. Agreed? Mm-hmm. So our best chance at all kids mastering the essentials is to collaborate. Sure. The only reason teams collaborate is to ensure mastery of essentials. For the stuff that's not essential, the stuff we hope they get, we wish they get, it'd be nice if they got it, we take care of that back in our individual classrooms, and kids are going to separate themselves above the bar. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. But no longer can we have anyone in permanent resting places below the bar. Now, without the bar, it's left to judgment. Mm-hmm. And what we end up with is a bar for these kids and a bar for those kids. A bar for kids on this side of town, a bar for kids on that side of the town, a bar for poor white kids, poor black kids, poor brown kids, a bar for the kids that don't speak the King's English, a bar for the kids with IEPs, but there's just one bar. And I take adults through an experience where they come to that conclusion, not me. But that's what it is. When you decide what every kid, when you decide what every kid's got to know, and then you look at your teammate like, all right, it's on. It's on. It's on. We're going to lean into our expertise to figure this out. And God help anyone walking down our hallway when we need more resources, we will snatch anyone up. Because it's all the team does. So if there are 4 teammates and they got 25 kids each, at the start of that 9-week period, there are 100 kids at the center of that table. And our job as a team is to monitor every kid's progress toward mastery of those essentials over a 9-week period. That's the work, nothing more. Everything we do is in the service of students mastering essentials. Common assessments are about finding out what's working, what's not, who's got it, who didn't get it, in time enough so that more kids end up mastering those essentials. RTI, extra time and support for kids who didn't get it, extension and enrichment for kids who did get it, identifying essentials, because you can't teach everything to mastery. It all comes back to mastery of the essentials. So equity is when you take seriously what you've deemed essential, and you grow the kid to the standard. Because when we deal with things that are essential in our lives, there is no can they or can't they. There's only how will we get them there. And that unleashes a level of innovation, divergent thinking, risk taking, ideas that we as humans have never known. When we decide, how will we get them there? That's the question you ask with essentials. When a team adopts that question and has identified those essentials and they stand behind those essentials, that's equity at work.
I feel like I'm getting my own little keynote speech here, man. I got you rolling right now. This is
Yeah,
great.
my bad. I'm just
No,
sweating.
this is good. I mean, people are gonna, man, if they're listening, I mean, I just don't know how you could not come away like inspired. You know, before I started the show, I read that you're known for combining equal parts heart,
Hammer, and
humor, and hammer, and I'm seeing
Yeah.
all three in full display today. This is awesome, man.
Well, thank you. I poke the bear. That's, everybody has a role in this work, but there's some people who hold everybody and just,
Yeah.
and I do. I empathize. I want to build folks up, but I poke the bear. I provoke. That's my lane. I provoke and then build up. I coach them up, but I provoke.
Well, I can see why you're a sought out guy. People want to hear you speak. They want to hear your experiences and your stories. And like I said, if you're joining us late, we're talking to Ken Williams here, author, speaker, consultant, does a little bit of everything. He's got his company there, Unfold the Soul. Where did Unfold the Soul come from?
All right. So I've been an entrepreneur at heart, and always been so. I had this epiphany one day that you could actually shape your own destiny. I didn't know that growing up. I had a friend who I'm still close with who had $2 every day for lunch, and I swear I would just stare at those $2 like, how do his parents have two? Some days I would check the serial numbers because I just could not believe this dude had two fresh dollars every day for lunch. And some days a $5 bill and didn't have to give the other dollar back. I was in awe. Anyway, I just figured, this is just my destiny, scraping together, my parents working 2 jobs to make ends almost meet. But when I realized that you can actually shape your destiny, I became really acutely interested in the entrepreneurial mindset and self-improvement. And the Bible for entrepreneurs is Think and Grow Rich by like Napoleon Hill. It's Think and Grow Rich. But there's another book written in 1903 by Wallace Wattles, and it's called The Science of Wealth. And I was reading the book, and one of the things he talked about, this just is not about material wealth and just like, gaining money by any means. What he talked about was, developing yourself as a person to a point where you are giving value to the world. When you give value to the world, you deserve to get remunerated. You deserve to be paid for that. And there's a line in there where he says, increase your personal value so you can give value to the world. And so instead of seeing the Leaning Tower of Pisa, money is the currency. You've got to make money so you can go see the Leaning Tower of Pisa, go see it in person. And there's a line in his book where he says to fully unfold your soul, you have to build yourself up, give value, be paid for it, and then access what the world has to offer. And when I read that, it just froze me there in my steps. And I said, that's it. That's my company, Unfold the Soul.
Oh, that's awesome. And you said that's from The Science of Wealth.
The Science of Wealth. Wallace D. Wattles, Wattles,
wow.
1903.
That's incredible. So, hey, okay, I've already had you here for about 40 or so minutes. And you're doing, I mean, I could keep you going all day. Let's dig into some of these quick hitters here that we've got, if you don't mind. And we ask these pretty much every episode, and just kind of, just kind of curious to hear what you have to say on these. So, the first question is, if listeners visit your city, and I don't know if you want to do the greater Atlanta area, you got a huge area there, but what is maybe one under the radar place? And there's a lot of people who do visit the Atlanta area from the Midwest here. So what is one place we have to check out?
Boy, oh boy. I read that question. I tried to prepare for it. Unfortunately, I'm so the Cab Farmers Market is pretty cool. It's this big, like, cleaned out warehouse, and it's got all these retail outlets and cool little mom and pop restaurants. Um, you know, the King Center, this is the, one of the hotbeds for the civil rights movement. So there's lots of historical sites you can go see off Auburn Avenue, like Dr. King's home, and all sorts of history. The Carter Museum as well, the Carter Center. That's about all I can give you. I'm a homebody.
Sure.
I drive around the neighborhood. I'm boring. I'm a homebody. I go to the city when I have to, and I grew up in the city, but I'm a homebody.
So
That's
no, those are great. Now, what was the farmers market? What was it called?
DeKalb, DA. So it's DE capital KALB, DeKalb.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
farmers market. Yeah.
And okay, I'm going to put you on. I didn't give you this question ahead of time, but could you pick one restaurant? Is there one? I mean, there's thousands of restaurants, but is there
Boy, oh
one
boy.
that is Ken Williams' favorite restaurant? If it's your birthday, if it's a special occasion, that you're like, we're going there.
Boy, oh boy. My number one. I would say it's a little Lebanese restaurant in Peachtree City called the Beirut. And they have the best authentic Lebanese food coupled with the best service culture ever. The best service culture ever.
I love it, man.
I mean, so much so that they felt little effects of COVID, because between the drive up, it reminds me of little hole in the wall mom and pop restaurants back in Manhattan that just, generations of families just patronize, and people go there every week. And it's just a little place in the suburb, Peachtree City, but they just great service culture and great food.
Love
The
it.
Beirut.
Okay.
If you're downtown, I would say the other restaurant was it's called Two Urban Licks. Two Urban Licks. It's a little more festive, but another place with great food. That's my downtown place, and then my suburb place is
Love it.
the Beirut.
All right, man. The Beirut and Two Urban Licks.
Yes.
Awesome, man. Great. All right. Hey, what is the best up to $50 purchase you've made in the last 6 months?
Yes. I had that answer too. I had that answer. All right. You know what? Give me the next one. Sorry.
We'll come back to it. Yep, you're good. What is the one book that has greatly influenced your professional life?
Boy, oh boy. So I'm going to give you a recent one, because I could literally pull all of Rick DeFore's books off the shelf and just show them to you one by one. But The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield is my new super favorite book. The subtitle is Break Through Your Blocks and Win Your Inner Creative Battles. Stephen Pressfield.
A lot of people talk about that book.
It is. I keep several on hand to give away. I just gave my last one away because of my son. When I were talking about it last night, he came home from work. He asked me about it. I gave him the book. I have to order some more.
Now, is you recently read it? Is it an older book? I don't know.
I think so. I think it came out like in 12.
Oh, okay. So it's not okay. Okay.
Yeah, so it's been around a minute.
Okay. So The War of Art. I just got to do it. I got to get it.
The War of Art, not The Art of War. That's a different one. Art of War, that's Sun Tzu.
Oh. Okay. The War of Art.
The War of Art.
Okay.
By Pressfield.
I've heard.
He says he's so economical with his words and just punches you in the mouth on every page, and I love it.
That's awesome. I got to do it. I got to pull the trigger, and I'm going to when we're done here. Okay, we've talked about this a lot, but what is one piece of advice you have for aspiring school administrators?
Boy, oh boy. My one piece of advice is I'm going to use a conjunction, right? Get absolutely clear on your shared purpose. And then understand that you're the only person in the building that can ensure everyone is doing the work. You're the only person. There's no one else. There's no one else in the district, no one else in the district that can ensure that people do the work. They got to do the work. And that's part of the blessed burden. And it's not going to get you, not going to make you very popular sometimes on the front end. And your gift card game going to take a hit. Probably the data from last year is probably going to drop off when you activate this piece of advice, but it's the truth. I'm the only person. The only person.
Nice. What is the best culture hack you have used in the professional setting?
I don't know that it's transferable, but those adult experiences, it's too involved to go into here, but when I conduct professional development, I like to put adults in adult world with in parallel experiences. They don't even know they're there. I just put them in scenarios, and then they look up and say, well, that's what we do. Of course we do that. And I'm like, well, that's equity. And if you take that mindset back to school, you'll be unstoppable. Or, why do you lower the standard for that person? Because we don't do that. Why would we lower the standard? That means we wouldn't get this. Well, then why do we lower the standard in schools? Mm-hmm. So it's creating adult experiences. So I don't know what they're called, scenarios or what, but I try to take adults to very realistic experiences and then bring them back to the work in a very organic way. Mm-hmm. And I can give them all the linear stuff on paper, like the 4 questions, the first step, the second step, the templates. I give meaning to all that stuff. So by the time I hand it to them, they understand what it is. That makes sense. Yep. So those adult experiences, I take
totally
an adult.
Agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree. If you can get them, there's so many adult examples where we think one way, and then when we get to dealing with kids, we think a different way.
Like just one quick one. I ask adults all the time when, if you got kids at home and they got chores to do, and on Sunday night they don't take the garbage out, and on Monday morning you wake up before the trash folks get there and you see it's not taken out, what do you do? And people are like, I go wake him up. I go wake him up and tell him to take it out. Or because I tell them the garbage, the collectors haven't been there yet. Go wake them up. And they're like, that sounds ridiculous. I says, well, here's a scenario. I can go wake my son up and say, hey, you didn't take the trash out. And my son's going to have one or two reactions. He's going to say, oh, either my bad, Pop, or make an excuse, or he'll say, my bad, Pop, and then go try to take it out, right? So he starts to pull the covers back to go take the trash out, and just imagine that I stop and say, oh, no, no. That trash was supposed to be taken out Sunday night. It is Monday morning. Now, granted, trash collectors haven't been here yet, but you're now trying to take that trash out on Monday morning when it was Sunday night? Absolutely not. Stay in that bed, go back to sleep, and that's it. And I ask adults, like, who does that? Like, no one does that. You make them take the trash out. And I said, well, I just gave him a 0, right? And I asked him, listen, what do you think my son would choose? Like, if he didn't take the trash out, he's got 2 choices. I can come, give him the riot act, and make him take it out. Or I can come to his room, give him the riot act, and tell him to go back to sleep. What do you think he's going to choose? And they're like, scenario B. As I got an A-student daughter at home, super self-starter, A student all the way through. What do you think she'd choose? They're like, she'd choose A. I was like, no, she'd choose B as well. Who wouldn't choose B? Who wouldn't choose the 0? The bottom line is parents make kids take the trash out because in life, the consequence for not doing the work is doing the work. The consequence for not doing essential work is doing the work. It's not a 0. You don't get zeros. You don't give zeros. You give follow-ups. Like you can send an email, a phone call, right, with a text message. Hey, I need this. But you don't give zeros. You don't give zeros. And for every person that tells me, well, someone will get fired. For every person who's been fired, I'll show you 5,000 people who got a second chance, a second day, a warning, an additional resource. I'm still waiting to find a principal who asked for report cards and comments on Friday and gets all of them on that first Friday. And I want to know, are you giving zeros to those teachers? Are parents coming up like, my neighbor said her report cards are blank because you gave her a 0. Nobody gets zeros. So let's stop with that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's stop making high school preparing kids for the real world. The real world is when you want students to be responsible, right? And so the consequence for not doing essential work is doing the work. So let's be really careful about what we assign and what we expect from kids, and then let's set them up to make it happen instead of ranking, sorting, and selecting and sifting kids out, and the ones who are self-starters win and the rest of us lose. That's not how life works. So the one with the whole, this parents and chores thing, that really hits home. It makes them mad, but it hits home.
Do you have a daily routine?
I wish I could tell you something great. I'm not a morning person. My wife laughs, like my body comes alive at 4:00 and it's nothing for me to be working until 1 or 2. I have terrible sleep cycles, but I guess if I have one routine and it's, nothing impressive, I go to bed thinking about like, what are the 3 things I want to get done tomorrow? Like if I get nothing but 3 things done, what are those 3 things? Like, what are the 3 things I got to get done? I always got a list of 100 things. I've always got unfinished projects, but what are the 3 I've got to get done? And those are the 3 I got to get those done by hook or crook. I got to get those done. So I think in 3s, especially when I'm feeling, overwhelmed and a list, I just kind of stop and think like, what are the things going to make me feel better when I put my head down tonight? What's going to make me feel better that I've gotten done? And it's usually the 3 things I'm trying to avoid. Like I'm writing a book now and I don't like writing. So that's definitely one of them. So I just think in 3s.
Is it just is it a mental list then? Is that just kind of, or do you write them down?
Honestly, it varies. I have a therapist. And one of the things he freed me of was, I try a great planner and then after a month I'd fall off with it. And then I'd move to so what he helped me see was that you got to do what works for you. Mm-hmm. So I'm always writing. I will say that. That's the common thing. But there are times when I'm writing on this little pocket wallet task thing with my little tasks listed, and I list them like A's that are the most important, B's that I could get to, C's. There are other times where, I actually do utilize a pretty cool planner,
mm-hmm.
and I write them down. And if nothing else, I don't know why, but I've always carried around these sketch pads. They're notebooks with blank sheets of paper. I don't know what it is about blank sheets of paper that help me with my creativity. So right now I'm in this book right now. So last night I just kind of wrote down the things that I need to do today. So I'm always writing, but it kind of vacillates between the 3.
Got it. So you said you're writing your book. When is your prime time for writing? Do you have a certain time of day, or does it kind of depend? Or
now, if you read Pressfield, he's going to tell you should have that routine, and all the great writers do. I'm not there yet, especially I'm not going to make any excuses about that either. What I am, however, is I write every day. I write every day, and I don't care if it's 10 words or it's 2 paragraphs of crap or something really awesome. The key is that I write every day, and that's helped me more than anything else, because up to then I was depending on my mood ring to sit down. And what Pressfield teaches you is the way to write is to sit your ass down and write. Sit down. You got to ignore your mood ring. You got to ignore what's happening around you. And in my book that I'm writing now, I call that ruthlessness. Like there's a ruthlessness to excellence. You've got to be ruthless about the things that matter and ruthless about the things that don't. And so that's been my level of commitment so far. As I'm up till 2 a.m, I do wish that I was up with the sun, right, and greeting the birds and sitting down with my Raisin Bran and writing for 3 hours, like a lot of writers do. But for someone who doesn't like writing, making sure I write something every day, that's growth for me.
Now you've talked a lot about the book. Are you able to share a little bit of a sneak peek on what you're writing about, or is that kind of under wraps?
No, it's all good. It's the working title is The Ruthlessness of Excellence. Facing our enemy, finding our power, and delivering on the promise of equity and excellence. And I have it set up where I identify an enemy, which is complacency. And I talk about all the forms that complacency appears. And then the second half of the book involves the antidote, which is the ruthless mindset and the principles that go along with that. And so I was inspired by The War of Art. It's a different kind of book, so different that like my publisher, they tried to publish it, but it's just not the kind of book they publish. And I don't know that I've seen books like it. It's like a coach on your shoulder, a guide on your side. There are no templates, there are no forms. It's just me in your ear, kind of telling you like it is, with love. And my goal is to be as economical with my writing as possible, which is the challenge for me. But that's one of the things I love about Pressfield is you can, like, a chapter will have 4 lines in it, but you'd be chopped in the throat and you're like, I got to think about that.
I agree with that though. You talked about being economical with your words. I love reading. It sounds like you love reading too, but man, there's just some books that take so many pages to
Yeah.
explain a couple concepts.
Yeah.
And
That's what I'm after.
that's
And
awesome.
I'm doing a decent job, but I'll go to like the Hemingway. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Hemingway editor. There's an app that will you'll cut and paste a paragraph from what you're writing, and it'll tell you this is on a 12th grade level. There are 4 sentences that no one's going to understand. You're using too many adverbs. So I got a ways to go. But that's my goal.
Well, talking about goals, I was just getting ready to ask you, what is one big goal you're currently working on? Would you say it's the book? Would you say it's the podcast? Would you say it's something different?
So it's 3 things. I would say the book is definitely one. Um, the podcast is an effort to, I'm sitting here with all this good content that,
Great content.
I want to do something with, and I want to build a following. And then I want that to eventually lead to uh, a membership site wholly and solely dedicated to elementary leaders. That's my 6-7 month goal, called Arena Leadership. And the idea is inspired by the speech that Teddy Roosevelt gave back in 1910, Citizen in a Republic, right? The man in the arena. And the premise is there's been so much attention on teacher isolation, and we've done a good job in education with that. We've really done a good job with that. But there's no attention on principal isolation, and much less superintendent isolation. And so I always picture elementary school leaders, assistant principals, and principals as the man and woman in the middle of the arena. And they're beholden to several different stakeholder groups, and they're often getting advice and opinions from folks who have not lived in the arena. And so my goal is to create an arena where they can come, be safe. We can throw political correctness out the window, keep it real, raw, relevant, and respectful, and provide them with, resources and support and community. That's my 6-month goal.
So I love it. Thank you for sharing that. One last question here. What is the best tip you have picked up the last 5 years that has made you more successful?
Boy, oh boy. The best tip. Okay, I got it. And then I've got that other question too. The best tip is my job is to create. My job is to create, not to judge, not to beat myself up about it, not to hold it under a bushel, not to doubt whether or not anyone's going to read it or watch it or care about it. My job is to create and produce. My job is to create and produce. And that is something I have to remind myself of every single day, especially in this day and age with social media just being literally part of almost everyone's life. And while I understand on the surface how it's a positive thing, I can just speak for me. I find myself saying, oh man, that's awesome what Jared's doing. That's awesome. And then 15 minutes into it, I'm like, how is Jared speaking at that conference? Why didn't they call me? Like, why didn't they call me to speak there as well? I mean, I find myself comparing, or like, that's awesome. Jared just published his book. God, you suck. You've been trying to publish this book for a year and a half. You just suck. You really do. Look at all the likes and blah, blah, blah. So I use social media to market. I get in, I post, I get out. And in terms of what I post, I learned from one of my coaches, my job is not to judge it. My job is not to think too hard about it. My job is to create. That's my job, is to create and produce, not create, produce, and feel bad if it doesn't get the traction it should have gotten. Or, I thought that they would love this thing, and you can't predict any of it. Like I've put out stuff that I had to tell myself to stop editing because I just didn't like the way it came out, and it's like it turned out to be like super popular. And other stuff, I'm like, this is gonna kill. Like, I'm gonna kill everybody with this one, and it's like nobody. And after a while, I just have to let it go. I got to create and produce. My job is to create and produce. There are way too many of us with ideas and aspirations, never act on it. And so I try to be a model for that, for my family, for my kids, and for my own peace of mind. So that's the biggest thing, is don't judge what you create. Don't spend too much time. Just create and produce. Create and produce.
Well, I spent probably 20 minutes this morning at your Instagram site. And
don't go there.
Well, I just saw those videos were great. I love those videos though, man.
Okay, because that's all I do is post. Yeah,
I thought it was good.
Thank you.
But I know what you're saying though. Sometimes I'm like,
I think I spent 10 minutes of my life on Instagram. On my phone, I can just go post.
Sure.
Click. Yeah.
Well, those I thought they're good. But that's just so fascinating from somebody. Just to share, I love how you said get in, get out. I feel the same way because you can get so consumed with looking at social media, comparing, and the same thing goes for us. We look at what other districts are doing, and oh man, they're giving away free lunches, and we're not doing that. Like what's our deal? Or what? Right. 98% graduation rate. All these.
Yeah. You go from admiring to like comparing yourself, and it's just not good. Can I give you my 5th best under $50 purchase?
Oh yes, I want to hear it.
Man, I don't know if you got Dollar Generals out there, but so I'm a homebody, but I'm very nostalgic. I'm an old soul. I love classic movies. Especially pre-code movies made before 1934. And I'm nostalgic. I own a couple of really old cars from the 70s. And that's what I do. I drive around town. I run errands for no reason, just for peace of mind. And the dollar store has there's this yellow, almost like a Windex spray. Oh my God. Like guys on car sites talk about it. They're like, don't buy the expensive stuff. The dollar store has this, you just go ask for the yellow spray. It cleans everything. And I bought like 6 or 7 bottles of that, man. And it's got my white walls looking so good. I just drive that car nice and slow now so everybody can see the shoes on it just that way. So that spray cleans everything though. I'm telling you, I'm telling you, it's a dollar store, Dollar General. Just ask for the yellow spray and they'll show you the spray. Just get it and keep it around your house. Oh, it gets anything up.
I'm trying to find this real quick. I might be a little too slow getting to it, but that's a great insight there. Shoot, I won't be able to find it right now, but so that's good stuff, man. That's good. Well, I'm glad you came back to it. I wasn't going to touch it unless you came back to it, and you did, and that was an awesome insight. So, hey,
there it is. La's Totally Awesome.
What's it called?
Man, it's called Totally Awesome. It's all-purpose cleaner. I get it from the dollar store. I'm looking at it on Amazon, but I'm telling you, it looks super nondescript, but it gets everything up, and it keeps my car clean. I love it.
I'm looking at it right now. You're right; it's all over. So I'm seeing it at Walmart.com for $11. So
no, I go to Dollar General.
Okay. Oh, that's awesome, man. I love those little just hidden gem items that you can buy
Yeah.
that just somebody has stumbled upon and word of mouth, and then suddenly you've got something that's changing your life. So
Makes absolutely.
that's awesome, man. Hey, is there anything I took up a lot of your time there, Ken? Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you'd like the audience to know?
No, just I mean, contact me at unfoldedsoul.com/contact if you're interested in talking about, how we can work together. If I have any questions you'd like to answer, and follow me on social media, Twitter, and that's it.
Sure. Where are you probably most active at it? Would you say Twitter then?
Twitter. Yeah.
Okay. So Ken, man, I really appreciate it. You are just an awesome guest. This interview just made me man, so many truths that you spoke, and we've got a lot of educational leaders that listen, superintendents, principals, aspiring principals, and I just don't know how they could have listened and not came away with a lot of great ideas
No, I'm glad.
for
I'm
leadership.
glad. Glad we're able to work it out.
So, hey man, I'll let you get back to your writing or your yellow spray or whatever you're gonna do there tonight. Eating some of that the Beirut. Maybe go check that out. That sounds
Absolutely.
amazing. So, hey Ken, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll stay in touch and just keep doing great things.
All right, looking forward to it.
All right, thanks, man.